In this tutorial, we'll be covering implementing DigiCam into your own project. So for this demonstration, I'm using a default third-person project, and we're going to be covering the entire process of enabling any required plugins and setting up the DigiCam component. So let's jump right into it. Once you have implemented the DigiCam folder from Fab, we can go ahead up into Edit and go to Plugins. Over here we want to search for Blueprint File Utilities. We can go ahead and enable this and restart our editor. Once that plugin has been enabled, we can now move on to implementing DigiCam to our character. So firstly, let's go to our content browser. Let's find where our character blueprints are stored. If your character blueprint or your project's game mode does not use a player controller blueprint, then we're going to go ahead and set one up. So for the third person base template, this does not have a player controller. So we can right click and search or click on blueprint class and select player controller. We'll just call this BP underscore third person controller and open this up. Now in the components hierarchy, we want to click on the add and we want to search for DigiCam, and we want to choose the DigiCam underscore AC or actor component. We can hit compile and save. Next, into class settings of our blueprint controller. Under implemented interfaces, we can add a new one and we're searching for DC. We're looking for the DC controller data underscore BPI. And then you'll see we now have a get DC component from parent interface function. So we can go ahead and open this up. Then we can drag out the DigiCam component that we just added to our components hierarchy and connect this up into the reference. We can compile and save. Now that we have added the DigiCam component, we can now move on to input. So DigiCam uses a variety of input mapping contexts and custom inputs to open and close the camera or the photo album. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our character's input mapping. In the case of the third person template, this is the IMC underscore default. So we're going to remember this name, IMC underscore default. Back into the DigiCam folder, we want to look for the DigiCam info data asset. So this is the asset that we would use to modify the different settings within DigiCam. The gameplay input mapping, we want to change to the IMC default, which is our character's input mapping. Again, this would be changed to your own input mapping in your own project. So we can hit save. So now DigiCam knows what input mapping to revert back to when we're not in the photo camera or photo album. We can go back to that input mapping that we mentioned. We can open it up. We'll see we have the move and look. So in your own input mapping context, you should also have a move and look input. So what we're going to do is we're going to add two mappings here. The first one will be photo camera underscore IA. By default, this bind is Q on the example menu, but again, this can be set to whichever key you'd need it to be. We can go ahead and add another mapping and we can search for photo album. And by default, this key is set to B, and again, can be changed to whichever key you need it to be. We can hit save here. Back into our content browser, we go to DigiCam. If we go to core and inputs, we can go ahead and open up the photo camera underscore IMC, and we'll have two inputs here called move DigiCam and look DigiCam. So these two input actions we would replace with our move and look input actions that we're using in our player's input mapping. So in this case, it's named IA underscore move. So here, by the move DigiCam input, we can search for IA underscore move. And the look was IA underscore look. And we can hit save. One thing I did forget to mention is if you are setting up a controller blueprint purely for DigiCam, you also want to make sure that inside your game mode, your player's game mode, we are assigning that player controller that we created to our player controller class inside of our game mode. So we can go ahead and do that now. We named it BP underscore third person controller. And compile and save. If we go ahead and hit play, we should now have everything set up. We can see the example heads-up display is being displayed in the bottom right of our screen. If we hit Q, we go into our photo camera, and if we hit B, we open up our photo album. Some things we can do with the photo camera specifically to sort of get it at a more head position is inside our third person character. Again, this is using a base third person character. We can change the location of our camera boom or our spring arm. We can bring this up to our player's head roughly. We can also adjust some values here on the spring arm. We can bring the target arm length a bit shorter. We can also add a small little socket offset just to give us that over the shoulder third person view. So now if we go ahead and hit Q, we can see the camera is now relatively at the head position. And we have everything set up and working. If you'd like to further learn more about how to set up custom objects to capture and how to modify DigiCam, please refer to the documentation page that covers all that information. Have a lovely day. Peace.